In the beginning, the Word created the heavens and the earth and everything in it. I mean, it was his most beloved creation, human beings, that he created to be in perfect relationship with him. I mean, this was the intention for mankind, to be fruitful, to multiply, to fill the earth, to govern it, to reign over all. And it was in this moment that God looked at all he had made and he saw that it was very good. I mean, God had provided the garden in Eden. And there were all sorts of trees that produced delicious fruit. There was a beautiful river that flowed through the land. And then the Lord placed man in the Garden of Eden to tend and watch over it. I mean, it was perfection. The Lord had given the man clear instructions to obey, and in one morning, he was able to eat of any tree except the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Eat of this tree and you surely will die. Then God said it wasn't good for man to be alone. Companionship was something that God desired for man. So the Lord made a perfect helpmate, woman. And all was good as the two enjoyed perfect union with each other and with God. I mean, it was paradise. Enter the serpent. And who is this serpent? Well, the fullest answer is given in Revelation 12:9. The great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth and his angels were thrown down with him. So the serpent in the garden is the devil, which means slanderer, and Satan, which means accuser, and the deceiver of the whole world. That's the one we meet in Genesis 3. He's already evil. He's already a deceiver. He's already a murderer when he appears in the garden of God. The question that cries out for an answer is, where did Satan even come from? And why does God tolerate his murderous activity? In Genesis, he just appears. Between the perfection and the appearance of evil in Genesis 3, something happened. The good creation, it was corrupted. But it's this little book of Jude in the New Testament that gives us a clue as to what happened. It says that the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. So it appears then that once there was a host of holy angels, and some of them, including Satan, sinned. In other words, the sin was a kind of insurrection, a desire for more power and more authority than they were appointed by God and under God. So Satan originates as a created angel who with other angels rebel against God. They reject him as their all-satisfying king and joy, and set out on a course of self-exaltation and presumed self-determination. They want to have authority over themselves and exalt themselves above God. Does this sound familiar to you? I mean, doesn't this sound exactly like the world we currently live in? It absolutely does. Why? Because a majority of the world is following the deceiver of the world. So it was Lucifer who would be renamed Satan. He brought sin to the human race in the Garden of Eden where he tempted Adam and Eve with the same enticement. You shall be like God. I mean, it was the enemy luring them in to follow their own way. God doesn't know better. I mean, isn't this the same old song we hear today from him? Yes, my friends, it is. And sadly, we follow this enticement more than we obey God. And we are no better than Adam and Eve. I mean, Genesis 3 describes Adam and Eve's rebellion against God and against his command. I mean, it describes how they fall into this trap. Before we move on, I want to clear something up. I mean, many of us ask why God would allow his creation to sin. Why create us that way? God created us and gave us the ability to choose. We weren't created robots. We were created to make our own choices. And people who ask this ridiculous question are the same people who would be screaming at God if we didn't have the ability to choose. So back to Genesis 3 where Adam and Eve's fall is described. So it is the same issue that still plagues us today. It's called that 5-letter word, pride. We know best. We don't need God's help. We've got this. I mean, we go against what God has for us and we choose our own way. It's that pride that leads to sin. It is that choice that we make that has separated us from a holy God. You and I chose to abort God's plan and follow Satan's plan. We left God's beautiful, perfect design and ran to brokenness, where without salvation, we remain. So for this, God's judgment came. In Genesis 3:15, God speaks to the serpent and pronounces judgment on him. Notice that at first it looks like the warfare will be between two offsprings, between your offspring and her offspring. But in the next word, something different is said. He shall bruise your head. Who is he? Answer, the woman's offspring. Well, who is your? When he says he shall bruise your head. Answer, the serpent himself, not his offspring. The day is coming, God says, when you, not just your offspring, will be defeated and removed from the earth. The offspring of this woman will crush you. That decisive blow was struck by the perfect offspring of the woman, Jesus Christ, when he died on the cross. There is no doubt this is a prophecy of Jesus' ultimate defeat of Satan. In other words, Jesus would be crucified, but would defeat death, proving he is God. This prophecy also gives us the first hint of the virgin birth, declaring the Messiah, the deliverer, would be the seed of the woman, but not of the man. Yes, the Messiah would eventually be conceived. God would come to dwell among us. This is why we call him Emmanuel, God with us. This is one of the reasons why the eternal Son of God had to become a man, because it was the offspring of the woman who would crush Satan. This is why God came in the flesh and dwelt among us, to redeem human beings from their bondage of sin. It would be Jesus who alone could defeat sin and death once and for all. You and I, we couldn't. We can't do anything but surrender to the one who can save us from our pride and transform us into his image. God's redemption plan. This plan started the day that Adam and Eve turned from God. This is when the plan was put into motion. This is what God would do for humanity. He would step out of heaven to come as a ransom, laying down his own life. In this, God prophesied the doom of Satan, showing that the real battle is between Satan and the seed of the woman. And as hard as this is for us to comprehend, this was the only way to fix what happened. No human being or human effort could fix the tragedy that was the fall of man. Only this promised seed of the woman. And who is this promised seed? I think most human beings on the planet could guess correctly whether they believe it or not. This is why the next thing we must do is follow the genealogies of the Old and New Testament and see how this whole story plays out. The genealogies, they are vitally important to the totality of the story.